this session, probably.
Maybe. I don't know. I don't know if I'd say I'm that good at it yet or not.
Can you guys see my screen, the intro page?
Yes,
slide?
ma'am.
Okay, cool. Sarah, do you want to wait a minute or?
Yeah, let's wait just a minute. That's okay. If that's okay with you, Annie. You got time to do. Let's timer. Can you grade one? How many papers can you get graded in a minute?
Oh, I'm gonna cut things up for Beta Club instead. How about that?
Well, shoot. Well, be safe with the scissors. That concerns me.
Yeah. Well, I have a paper cutter in the back of my room, but I'm just gonna do it by hand.
How's it going?
Huh?
How's it going? Are you getting into more of a flow? Can you talk? If I ask you questions about patterns and routines within the Amplify platform, are you like a pro?
Not a pro, but no, I know what I'm doing now. Yeah.
I love it.
I can just dissect what they want me to do and figure out what I want to do and make my video all before the week. Used to see, I have all of next week ready already.
Whoa, that's awesome.
Yeah.
See, advanced right there. Advanced.
That's cool.
Well, also we have like a 2.5 day, like in-person day next week. So.
Oh, well, that makes it nice too.
We got
Seth. Hi, Seth. We haven't started yet. So because this is basically a personalized learning session, if you're not afraid of us, you should we want to see your face.
Hello, I'm sorry. That's my husband. My name is Hannah. Hello, I'm Dr. Hale. Nice to meet you.
It's nice to meet you.
He's been on my laptop, so it's a whole thing. But my name is Hannah. Seth is in the living room.
I love it. Well, now, where are you all from? I know just for the sake of introduction.
I'm from Greene County. I teach 7th grade English at Tuggy Oak Middle School. Most days.
Hannah, where are you from?
Did you say Hannah? I'm sorry.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm not hearing well.
This is going to be fun, Hannah and Anna.
Yeah, it's exciting. So my name is Hannah. That is, my mother is German. I'm a German citizen. That's my first language. So that's why it's Hannah, not Hannah.
Cool.
But I am in Sevierville, Tennessee. I teach at Northview Academy. I teach 8th grade ELA. We don't really do honors classes, so I have one honors crew and a couple inclusions, so it just kind of depends. This is my 5th year teaching. I just finished my doctorate this fall, which is super exciting. Yeah, so that's me.
Yay, it's so nice to meet you guys. Well, I guess we'll go ahead and get started, Candace, because it seems like we're
yeah, I think we might have one or two pop in a little bit later, but we'll go ahead and get started here. Thanks for chatting with us for just a little bit. We are excited to have you guys joining us this afternoon. This is our Affinity Group Session 1 for curriculum support. Today we're going to review some high impact practices, model strategies, share resources, and highlight ways to facilitate effective teaching and learning. We'll talk about what that looks like in the traditional classroom as well as in remote settings. I'm Candace Herman, and co-presenting with me this afternoon is Sarah Kitzmiller. You guys spoke with her just a moment ago. So today's session is the first of 2, addressing again curriculum support. So we're going to be using this analogy of a road trip throughout to just kind of reinforce this idea of planning with the end in mind. So because districts have had a choice in curriculum selection, we won't all necessarily have the same curriculum, which is just okay for our purposes today. So we're going to spend time not really thinking about the nuances of the platform necessarily, but just in general, the kind of thinking and planning necessary to better understand our curriculum. And I think, Anna, that might have been what you were kind of touching on just a moment ago when you were speaking with us. Excuse me. So just to be really clear, we'll have a document later that we'll use to kind of anchor our thinking today, but it's not really about completing the document, especially. Like, we won't get done with it today. Today is mostly just about the time that we have together, just building our collective knowledge and preparing lead teachers and other school leaders with the opportunity to facilitate this kind of support and this kind of learning when you guys get back into your schools. So the tool that we'll have later is just that. Like, this is really about the thinking and planning necessary. So we all know this screen like inside and out. So I even hate to have it up here for a minute, for like a second. We'll just kind of touch on the features that we'll use. We're just going to use mic and chat today, nothing too fancy, since we have a smaller group. So again, Sarah and I are your presenters today. So you may take note on this and a following slide that we have both the link and then like a QR code if that's easier for you guys, whatever kind of device you might be on. So we talked just a little bit about who we are and where we're from. Like, I don't know if it's inappropriate to have toilet paper on a screen, but it's like, you know, we hope we're wrapping up COVID. How can you not acknowledge it? So toilet paper, we're going to roll with it. Ha, pun, didn't even mean to do it. Okay, sorry. So we're going to respond in the chat to our preferences to not toilet paper, guys, but to like the following. So in general, like, do you prefer adventure or comfort? And you literally just type one of those words in the chat. And that might depend on what kind of day that you've had, maybe. Sarah, are you an adventure girl or a comfort girl?
I'm an adventure girl.
You could say that.
Yeah.
I'm not. I'm like sitting here with like, I don't even remember. I can't get too personal here, but like shoes have not found my feet in like a couple hours at least. So comfort, definitely. Call or text?
Oh, I'm the worst. I'm a call girl. I like to call, and people are like, I mean, I need rotodot. Like, I'm like back into the old days. Let's make some conversation over the long curly string from the phone.
I know you were telling me about text a while ago, and I was like, was that a text? I thought you were just like reciting dialogue. Yeah, text. Text for me. And then ninja or pirate? I don't know. Like, are you guys like undercover or are you renegades?
I'm a total pirate.
You
Yeah.
are. I actually put this in here because of like work that we had done in the past, Sarah. That's for you, girl. So I can't pull up. If you,
I don't identify with either, so I don't know.
Oh,
that's probably a good thing, actually. Feel good about yourself.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll keep on going, guys. The approach that we've had with just framing this understanding for this work for rural life, I think you guys have seen this a few times as well. So we're just trying to blend what research tells us about literacy and personalized learning to help create these experiences that we hope will yield high student proficiency. And so Sarah and I will talk a lot later on during the session about proficiency and just really getting it set in our mind, like what that actually looks like. So our purpose for this collaborative is to provide opportunities for us to learn with and from each other, even in this small group. We want to look back on some of the rural life work that you guys have done and share out those best practices. You're doing good things and we want to hear about it. It helps us prepare. It helps you guys grow as well. And we want to hone in on those topics that schools selected as focus areas. So we'll continue progressing over the course of this semester with this collaboration and reflection according to this timeline. And we'll see something a little bit more specific later as we go, but this just kind of gives us a general idea of where we're going in this semester. So we're about to wrap this up. For our objectives today, I'll go ahead and pop all these up here. Excuse me. So we're going to review the understanding by design process and how it supports teacher planning and student proficiency. So again, like, yeah, we're using a document that we've adapted, but really we're talking about the process of the planning. And within that, we're going to unpack a prompt with this template in order to develop that content knowledge. Again, so we have that picture of proficiency in mind. We'll think about planning for the next week's instruction using content and proficiency indicators. Anna has already worn it out. She is ready for next week. I'm going to let her lead like the last section of this. And then we'll talk about reflecting on and adapting that UBD. Because again, like this is something flexible for us. UBD, like we didn't make this up. This has been around for a good at least 20 years or so. So we're just trying to adapt it for our purposes here. And you certainly have that flexibility as well. So to kind of return to this idea of a road trip paralleling this backward design, we're planning with the end in mind. We know where we want our kids to go. We know what it looks like when they demonstrate that proficiency. And we're going to approach this with these 3 stages in mind. Again, we're going to spend this time today unpacking an end of the unit task or prompt. We're going to identify what those desired results look like, proficiency, and then we'll outline a learner plan. So beginning with the end in mind, like even in the case of a road trip, it just provides greater clarity about preparation and helps us evaluate or judge if we are experiencing the results that we've set out to have. So when we know where we want to go, we can look at where we are in relation to that, like how close are we? Do we need to remediate? Do we need to adjust? Or can we keep progressing forward? And so Stephen Covey, he reminds us of this principle when he speaks about having that clear understanding of our destination. We know where we're going, where we are now, and if we're going in the right direction. And again, if we need to adjust, just kind of recalibrate. So to support that kind of planning and thinking, we're again going to use this UBD framework. So again, it's not a plan, it's not a document, it's an approach to, it's not even a philosophy, it's an approach or a framework for looking at the work, your curriculum, which is already done for you guys. So maybe, and Sarah, I'm sure will chime in on this later. The curriculum, like it's done. Thank the Lord in heaven, like this has been provided for us, right? So it's not like we have to create anything. We just want to have that deeper understanding of the way we're leading our kids through these progressions and what that actually means, just so we can support that better for them. So we'll be asking ourselves, again, how are we defining proficiency? So what do we want our kids to be able to demonstrate at the end of that unit or lesson? What kind of learning and thinking should they be experiencing as they progress towards that demonstration of proficiency? So then at the end, what knowledge, skills, activities, strategies, materials, and resources, what are they going to need in order to reach that proficiency? So what do they need to be taught, and how should we be teaching it? Sarah, before we move on to that next really important slide, was there anything that you wanted to add on to this portion?
It just always makes me realize too, and again, some of this is coming from experience with ed reports, and some of this is coming from experience with working at the foundation. But after looking at multiple high quality curriculum materials, multiple different kinds, Amplify, Wit and Wisdom, Pearson, Expeditionary Learning, I could name a dozen that I've reviewed for ed reports and written reports on. And what's wonderful when you think about this is, as teachers in Tennessee, prior to this past year, we were basically curriculum cultivators, planning instruction around the lack of evidence we were seeing with regards to mastery. And so when we're given materials, it feels like, oh, the work I did last year, I'm not going to have to do that. But it's that shift in energy of moving backward and forward that I feel like is having a moment here, because in terms of planning and teacher care and self-care, it is that, in fact, process of how we as adults build knowledge and familiarity with that which is new. And if we don't have a good pattern in place of how we develop what proficiency looks like within our materials for both teacher practice and student outcomes, it's so hard to keep focused. As you all may be experiencing, it's like there's a lot of energy that it takes to transition or move the wheel in that direction, coming from the position of curriculum cultivator to now curriculum facilitator that has more time to process what instructional practices, because that's the learning. While we teach, we're learning. Even when we have good practice of planning in place, there's this like learning curve that happens between, this is what I've planned, this is reality, right? It's like, this wasn't on the lesson plan and here we are. But it's also like, wow, I hadn't thought about how this product supports proficiency instructionally like this in terms of teacher. So there's moments of like dissonance we're having. And I feel like when we think about backwards design this way, we kind of have an ability to see where some of our rubs might be with our new curriculum that gives us some more opportunity to focus on those areas that we know we're struggling with because of that learning curve transition we're having as educators. So.
Sounds good to me. Sarah and I have had like numerous hours of conversation about this. So I just want to kind of piggyback on what she was saying. Like, we really, during this time, but just in general with rural life, like, we really want to honor you guys, you teachers, as learners. We have to know this, not just the content, but like conceptually, like we have to know this before, we as teachers have to know this before we're able to deliver and to present this, these learning opportunities to kids. So we just really want to highlight the importance of giving you guys the time to network, to work together. And so that's what we'll spend later in this session. That's what we'll spend a lot of time doing, is just using it really as a work session. And then Sarah is going to share out this information with us as well.
Well, because here's where I'm at, because I like weird stuff, because I'm weird. I'm a weird person, maybe. Okay. But I also like my weirdness, if that makes any sense. And so as a teacher, when I thought about initially high quality curriculum materials, when I first started working for Ed Reports, there was a sense of like this red plant that's behind me here, like burn me up because I'm doing a good job. There was a feeling I had about it that wasn't necessarily real. It was based off my preconceived notion of what they were saying I needed to do. And also it was the difference between my connotation and denotation, my reaction, if you will, to adopt versus adapt, because I was acting as a teacher in adaptive mode. And as I was adapting things to what I felt like was my students' needs, I was eroding away at the curriculum in terms of rigor to some degree. If I wasn't given freedom to design a unit, I was making the unit mine through that adaptation. And what I feel like is kind of like where we have to really pump the brakes is there is a lot of glory and a lot of weirdness, because I have to find that to get motivated. I know that sounds strange, but I do like my weirdness. I like to find that unique thing that I can bring to this interpretation, this experience I'm having as a learner, as well as my kids. And for me, I didn't see the honor as a teacher in adopting. You adopt when you don't know, and that's just not true. You adopt in some cases to learn. And as a teacher, I have made that transition mentally because I realized that there is something to be said for high quality curriculum materials that goes beyond my teacher training and 20 years of experience, because there were things that were lighting fires with me as I was working through curriculum with Ed Reports that I had never seen instructionally done and I didn't think would work. And to see that it worked and to see it worked more quickly for all children was really exciting. However, I'm also a data person. Like, what's your evidence? Why? Why would I do this? Why would you make me go through thinking adopt is bad and now you're making me change it to good? I'm kind of mad at you. What's going on? It's because there is a lot of research that John Hattie has released recently that is very supportive of this process as well too. So building teacher knowledge around a table together, despite sometimes the discomfort we can experience with our new curriculum materials and with each other, it is worth pushing through that to tap into what we call collective teacher efficacy, which has a 1.57 effect size, as well as cognitive task analysis. Some of you may be familiar with the work around procedures and protocol work. I think it was a medical bill, red book. I can see the book where they talked about, like procedures like removing a kidney. There's only so many ways you can effectively remove a kidney. And if there's a process in place, it's likely to occur effectively. An effective removal will occur if you follow the procedure. And so this cognitive task analysis allows teachers to develop an understanding of what the unit is trying to get kids to see through the texts that they're going to be able to talk about in their writing over the course of the unit. And when we do that, there is a collective efficacy plus this idea of cognitive task analysis. And when you add those combined impacts together, you get a 2.86 effect size. And keep in mind, that's 0.4 is associated with a year's growth. So again, this is backed by data, not just because Sarah likes to be weird or Candace likes to be weird. Now I'm speaking for you, Candace, so I know you don't like to be weird. You point out my weirdness, but I'm just saying the data in terms of our efforts in being adopted, like how could we possibly adopt this in an effective way as we learn together? These are two practices that if you brought back to your team are going to impact student outcomes in a way that I can appreciate, because it's allowing me as a teacher to dig into the knowledge that I need to have to teach students effectively. It's not directly associated with work with the students. It's really giving space to me as a teacher taking the time necessary. So this is something too your building principal may need to know about. You could show your building principal in saying, look, it's important that if I'm isolated as a teacher, I'm the only 6th grade teacher in my building, it might be worth my time to take a half day once every 9 weeks to sit down with my counterparts across the district to think about task analysis together, because it's going to have a significant impact. Guys, this process I followed in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, and have over the course of several years with the teachers. It's this concept of what does proficiency mean in terms of what am I teaching towards that helps us close gaps while we're doing that, because that is what closes gaps, focusing on my instructional practice and identifying proficiency. And I've spent too much time. I geek out over this because it means a lot to me. But also I love it because it's geared towards the work of teachers, and it gives honor to the work that we do together. And I appreciate that. So again, thinking about this, Ed Reports has a section completely on this for all of the high quality curriculum materials. There is strength in coherence, meaning that when you first start your launch, you're going to feel as if you are like turning a boulder over. Anna, you probably, I know just from working with you, could probably talk about this. When you first start it is heavy. Your yoke is heavy, and you will turn that boulder over until eventually it will become something that you can just kind of get into a rhythm, and it's not as heavy anymore. You've got some momentum behind you. But what is more helpful in new curriculum implementation, sadly, is not a response here. It's more about connecting with your materials and finding the response that the materials have towards identifying what is proficient, and then marrying that understanding and connection to Tennessee state standards and seeing how it plays out, because there's a strong connection there. Also, we are in stage 1. This is the fun part. This is like my favorite part. I love if somebody was cutting something up. Maybe it was you, Anna, you were cutting things out with scissors. This is my favorite thing to do, and I wish we were in person, because this is what I would love to do with multicolor highlighters and all kinds of fun things. But unpacking the prompt is the key here to aligning what you are moving towards in terms of knowledge building. And it's not just simply unpack the prompt, but thinking about as an educator, when you look at the words, what are words that are synonymous with that you feel like kids will have to do? What are words that would be the opposite of that, and fleshing that out so you can physically see that, because a lot of times that can connect to the struggles you will see students have. And here you've already kind of brainstormed that with your team. So getting everyone's experience behind unpacking that prompt at the table with the team is part of the value here. And I realize that we're by ourselves singular today. So what we're going to do, Candace, are you going to drop that in the chat? Do you care to? Oh,
yeah, the blank template is in there. And as we progress through, I'll go ahead and put an example for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade in there as well for you guys to select from if you choose to.
So you're going to focus on highlighting keywords and phrases, obviously. But if you don't mind, just, type out or write out, if you've got it in front of you, the words, like synonymous words with those keywords and phrases, both words that mean the same and words that mean the opposite, to maybe identify confusion points for kids or where kids in the past have been confused. Also, think about things that you can predict based off of what's what knowledge they are building. What are some misconceptions that your experience has led you to understand that could be problematic, or be things that you're going to need to include when you do some close reading activities? That's going to be key here in unpacking the prompt. So what you're going to do is, this is stage 1. If you have your digital materials, feel free to unpack it digitally online. Feel free to copy and paste your prompt into the box on the template. Whatever you choose to do, we're going to go ahead and give you some time to do that. Candace, based off our time, let's see. What do you think, about 4 or 5 minutes to do that? Is that going to be enough time for you all to kind of copy and paste and get your prompt in there? Okay. This is the hard part where I have to be quiet.
Hannah, can I ask you what your curriculum is? I know that Anna is using Amplify. What are you using?
Oh, you're muted.
Thank you. Sorry, I was just talking to you guys. Okay. We're in the midst of adopting new curriculum, and we are doing Amplify starting next year. So we actually just had a big in-service project. So I do feel a little bit, I'll be honest with you guys, the textbooks we have, they're literally 15 years old. Like I'm not exaggerating. So so I very rarely use them. I especially since so many of my students are virtual this year, I have found online PDFs and resources and I try to use all of those resources. We use iExcel, we use tons of GimKit review sets. So we try to sort of bolster our standards that way. But at this present moment, my textbook does nothing for me, so which is so regrettable. So I'm so excited about the Amplify curriculum, and maybe Anna can tell us some more about it. Like I'm so excited. It seems phenomenal. So in the last year, I essentially have built out just my own units and try to support them. So I'm not 100% sure. So I genuinely can't tell you a curriculum because the books we use are so old. Our spelling books are actually 20 years old. And of course we know currently spelling practices are not really supported by current education policies. So we do lots of vocabulary in my class and vocabulary in context. So that helps us a lot. So yeah, so I'm a little uncertain which direction I should go with this.
Candace, your 8th grade example is Amplify, correct?
Yeah, actually all of them are Amplify because that's the only resource I had access to.
You can't click them. They say request access when you click them.
And yeah, would you mind giving access?
Yeah.
I think it's going to be great, Hannah, to dig into Amplify. I think now that you know you're heading in that direction, you'll be able to this summer to kind of look at some of like what's in the first unit.
Right.
And when did you get access to your stuff?
I think we started doing PD on it in July. I think we had one at the end of June, but I'm going to be honest, I didn't look at it at all till school started. So, I mean,
this school year, my word, no.
Yeah. So, but I'll also say this: the unit I'm doing right now in Amplify, I'm not doing the essay at the end. So I decided to go with a different unit that I might have time to do later instead.
Well, the thing I want to say, Hannah, is when you are, as you prepare to kind of, once you're ready to turn over the soil, if you will, of this year and move on to next year, contact one of us, Candace, or me, and we can absolutely support you with some documents to get your mind even around the 10,000 foot view of just what are some structures we could put in place that would be supportive in my environment, because I kind of have to start there.
Oh, for sure. No, and I think, again, what I saw from that one PD that we've had was just phenomenal. The way that you can differentiate instruction and you can vary the levels, and then kids get immediate feedback. Like I'm just mesmerized. I had no idea there was a curriculum that had that many strong qualities. So yeah,
so actually new spelling. I don't know if you've seen them, Anna. There's new spelling mastering conventions work that's for each grade level that can be inserted into, like if you're doing the fluency work in flex days. So I would be more than happy to give you, I know Candace would too. Yeah. Either one of us would be more than happy to give you like a walkthrough session just to get your head around it. I know Anna and I had a few phone conversations. She's probably sad she called me because I'm kind of a spaz, but I get excited. I kind of geek out over certain things. And if there's things that you're wondering about or thinking about, we're also collecting data on usage and process and that kind of thing. And it's a lot. There's a lot to learn. I learned something. I've been working with this product for going on 4 years now. And it's like I learn layers and layers and layers every year. So we're happy to help.
No, I appreciate that so much. And I think circling back to what you said earlier, a huge portion of my dissertation was based on self-efficacy. And I think about that in context of new curriculum, because when teachers don't feel like they are qualified or informed enough or trained enough to attack a new curriculum, then
Yes.
our students, they sense that. They sense our negativity, they sense our hesitance. And I'm probably the youngest English teacher by 20 years in my grade level. And so many are so used to that textbook that every year it's been like clockwork. So I think self-efficacy is a really important cog in the wheel just to get that process moving. And then you used a Brené Brown quote, and I always think of Brené Brown and her work on vulnerability. And I think self-efficacy requires vulnerability, saying, I don't know how to do this yet. So I'm so thankful that you guys are embracing that. And that's what these sessions are for. So I'm so thankful. As I said, I've only had one training, but I'm excited to get access. And I'm so hopeful to check out the novel sections, because I love that they integrate content there. For me, we do 6 block weeks. So we have six weeks. I think our county is moving towards the quarter direction in the future. But so I do a novel every 6 weeks. So I'm really hopeful that I can still sort of structure that with my students. So this week, the one I was going to actually write about was the Hunger Games. We just started that a couple of weeks ago. And I've never taught it before, because last year on the day that we all shut down the schools, it was Friday the 13th of March. I checked out the Hunger Games for my kids.
Is that not something else? I'm sorry, that's something else.
Well, Loki, and my husband was like, did you really give your kids a dystopian novel at the start of a pandemic? And I was like, I'm sorry, I didn't know. It was crazy. So if anyone's emotionally scarred, it's my fault, but it's fine. So I never got to teach it. So this is the year. So I'm kind of just coming to it blank slate, and I'm so excited about input. The way I usually do things is I tell my kids, I drew it out here. I do a circle, and we divide it into fourths, and we have 4 things that we're trying to address. And of course, those are all undergirded by our standards, but we do vocabulary, themes, text structures, and constructed response. So we learn the vocabulary, we get into the themes, and text structures is something that is pushed so much in 8th grade. And I'm so thankful. That's really helpful for our kids. And then of course, constructed responses, when they give back and they reflect. So that's awesome. But that was a huge, big tangent. I'm sorry. Carry on.
No, I love it. I think it sounds exciting. I'm like excited. You've inspired me to have more energy right now in this very moment, because you brought your energy, so and I'm excited now.
Me too.
What I think Candace has re-released the example template. So if you haven't clicked on those recently, check those out to see if it's allowing you access, because if you click on the 8th grade one, that's going to show you kind of an example of one of the 8th grade units already. Obviously, there's lots to be added to that based off your thoughts and thinking. If you wanted to add more, that was just kind of this could be what it looks like. And again, as Candace said earlier, this is a process that we adapted to help us. And I say we adapted, I'm going to be very specific here. My elementary school principal, when I was a coach in Kingsport City, and I did this work for 2 years, and literally, I'm not kidding when I say this, they won a state gap closure the first year they did this. We weren't trying to close gaps. We were trying to prevent the level 1 to level 5 school flip-flop happening, which is the intent behind why we were attempting this process. Like, we need to get at standard work, and we need to get at unit work. And that's when we had our own units and some Institute for Learning units. So we were doing this work with units that weren't geared towards necessarily mastery anyway, because I mean, a lot of the units in 4th grade, for example, I designed myself. And as much as I love the standards and know the standards, I don't know how. I'm not necessarily an expert in reading, research, and understanding what work is necessary for kids to be masterful. So having said all that, this next part of this process, if it's okay, I'm going to go ahead and jump to this for sake of time. This is where, in my opinion, this is where we can make those connections deeper if we copy and paste standards that are associated with our unit, our end of the unit task, as well as focus standards within the unit, if we have enough time to copy and paste our standards there, because then we're going to be able to talk about, once we leave stage 2, what kids are going to be able to know and be able to do as a reader, writer, speaker, and listener. And this is the thing, and I know Anna and I've talked about this a lot too, the collaborative activities can feel cumbersome and sometimes feel unimportant when we think about them, but they are designed and amplified to be an opportunity for a close read or redirecting kids back to the text to reread if they haven't already. And they're doing it either in peer collaboration, side by side, small group work, that kind of thing. It is designed as a step towards mastery. It is part of the core instruction. So that's, obviously COVID initially made us think really differently about that because it's not safe to work with each other. So when we think about this stage and we think about those keywords and phrases, what does that mean kids are going to have to read for? What kind of analytical skills are they going to take to the text as their, almost as I like to say, as their goggles? So what lens will they be looking through as they read the text, maybe the second or third time? How will they develop this understanding? What will they need to be able to talk about before they're going to be able to write successfully to this prompt? So those are just some things, some examples to think about as you work through this section. And then Candace, if you don't care to click on that next slide, the piece that sounds like Sarah Kitzmiller made this up, I'm pulling this language from Ed Reports, this idea of procedural proficiency, which is kind of a new concept, but it is what behaviors kids can have as readers that are closely linked to being masterful, if that makes sense. And I'm saying masterful, I don't mean advanced, I mean really proficient. Like, how are they keeping track? This makes me think of math, which causes me to have anxiety, but it makes, how are they keeping track of their thinking? And are they, and this is going to sound like, again, a pain in the grits, but if we're making them keep track of their thinking, are we also showing them that that process has value as we move deeper into the text, so that they're going back to where they've kept track and realizing that those pieces are important? Because it's not just keeping track of the text through annotation that's important, it's showing them that that annotation has value throughout their learning process and engagement with the text. So that's kind of, I know this sounds nuts, but when we look at those questions regarding vocabulary that Candace and I were doing this the other day, because Candace, we're nerds, in looking at, and I'm saying that with love in my heart, because we went back and looked at PARCC assessments, at Tennessee practice assessments, and at NAEP assessments. And I think NAEP's in 8th grade, where they're looking at they've added some questions to the 10 Ready test that are nationally normed. But what we found is that all of these questions required kids to go back to specific parts of the text and look for those things that hopefully they read the first time. And so hopefully the question is causing that second read. So we call it procedural mastery because it is in fact that going back that matters. My son is in 6th grade and he gets this from his dad and it's exhausting. He's advanced, okay? And he's also high, has so many emotions tied to his label of advanced. I wish he didn't have that label, because what that does is that prevents him from feeling comfortable as he's read a text that he's advanced. I don't have to go back and read that text. Yeah, you do, because Mama read the text once too. And now that I've read this question that you're struggling with, I'm struggling with it unless I go back to the text. So again, to reinforce the value of a lot of these curriculum materials, they're designed to be complex because the way kids are going to be assessed is complex. And going back is part of what I used to call it comprehension, like metacognition strategies. We used to call it metacognition strategies. That might be a familiar phrase to you all. It's kind of like, how can I personally connect to the text? How can I make meaning from the text? It's really more about rereading. And how many ways can we reread, keep track of what's important from that rereading, and use the focus of the question that's being asked to help us find those nuggets. That's part of this procedural under proficiency. And this is where, especially, Hannah, when you have an older group of individuals teaching ELA, they're going to need a little bit more convincing of that. And I found the best way to do that, and that's why I hate we're not in group, is when you take a chunk of the text that kids have to read and ask adults to read it, you don't even have to say, these are the annotation things I want you to do. You will see them doing it to be able to answer that question. So that's something that you could maybe do with them to say, hey, this is worth thinking about, because it's hard.
That's a good idea. Well, and I think sometimes when you throw new curriculum at people who are very comfortable where they are, all of a sudden they forget that they know their texts inside out. And your knowledge does not change. Those skills still apply regardless of what text is in front of you. And that's precisely what we're trying to teach our kids. Doesn't matter what text they encounter, whether it's in high school, ACT, college, if they have the skills to annotate, if they have the skills to break it down into the sections that matter, theme, all the different components, you guys know, you teach. But I think that that's that part of self-efficacy, like teaching them the confidence. You know how to do this. It just looks different.
Yeah. And the reason I go back to a text is probably in part because there is a hole in my boat. I am drowning in my little lake of Sarah, but the only way I'm going to get over it is if I go back to the text. I feel like they just have this preconceived notion that if you don't know how to read, you have to go back to the text. That's my son's feeling, and I'm trying really hard to not be too harsh about, that's not what that means. That means you've got to go back and reread.
For sure.
And second of all, I do think it's a great neutralizer, though, because I feel like for your kids that struggle, they're so used to like desperately going back to the text that it helps reinforce what they're already doing to some degree.
Oh, for sure. And you're modeling. I mean, you're showing what it is to go back and re-examine. And I think if adults did that more, kids wouldn't be so shy about or have that preconceived notion that I read it once and I don't know it, because we have to read things so many times. Very few people have those memories, so that's awesome.
And this is also where, and Anna, you probably could talk a little bit about this, but this is also where you can lean on Amplify, but you could also have a little bit more autonomy in this direction, because if you use the online platform, keeping track, I would suggest to start there, because they're going to keep track of where they've highlighted and that kind of thing. But this is also where if you have a Google Classroom, if you have a Canvas course that you've created, this could be another place where they're pulling in information for discussion boards and that kind of thing, so that you have a little bit more autonomy in what this procedural proficiency looks like in your classroom, if that makes sense. So I just wanted to point that out. And I feel bad because I'm not looking at the time and I can get into okay, oh gosh, okay, so we're moving on, and I hate to just kind of jump. We're going to give you, this is the overview, okay? This is the overview. So we have the established goals.
You say one. Hey, I want to piggyback for like 20 seconds on what you're saying about that procedural proficiency. Just, Hannah, because like you will have access to this, and Anna does. The way I've seen this within Amplify, because that's the only curriculum I have access to right now, is it can be as simple as like listing like the characterization traits and just like returning to it. Or I've also seen teachers, like Sarah was saying, using their LMS or just other digital features to keep up with like the structure of the text and how that's supporting the meaning. So it kind of, it ranges from like really simple, just a list of stuff that we're going back to, but really just to kind of hone in on that point of like, we're looking at the text like a bazillion times. And that's kind of the point, the benefit of that procedural proficiency. I don't know if that's 20 seconds or not, but there you go. Okay.
I want to piggyback now. With also the procedural proficiency, one thing I like with Amplify, the actual book curriculum part, is the writing journals, because on the online platform, it is very hard for them to go back to something that they might have made a chart of or whatever else. And it's very hard for them as middle schoolers to navigate back to that and then back and forth. I mean, I have a hard time with it. So using that writing journal, and I'm going to try to see if we can just order the writing journals next year. I don't know if we can, but I didn't even use all of the writing journals, but just having that like chart already printed out and just having it there, and then being like, okay, you can use that chart to do your writing prompt now. Use that chart and the evidence you found now in the writing task. And so with that procedural idea, I mean, with Amplify, I would definitely vote for the writing journals.
Yeah, I love it too, because it's a great thing too. You can go back at the end of the year, or with your SPED kids, or just in parent teacher conferences, and you've got instant growth over time in terms of improvement. You know, you've got, it's almost like a little portfolio there of what we've
Well,
done together.
I mean, and I didn't even use it for actual writing because honestly, it's a lot faster for kids to type because they're used to using the computer now. But which we're going to get into handwriting now that TCAP's coming closer. But
Yeah, I was going to say that's good though that you did both, because that's how they'll write this year.
yeah, so, and I like the online platform having them type because you can leave feedback more easily, and you can see like how Amplify will grade it for you. It'll like grade their grammar and like rate it on a 1 to 4 scale for you. So you can kind of like have an idea of, if you don't actually want to grade every single writing thing, which would be a lot in Amplify because they write every other lesson. But having that online is much easier to just see all together than having it in the writing journal. So I don't know. I like both.
Like both. That's
Can
good
I-
to know. That's good to know, honestly. And this is like my favorite part, but it's also the part that can be frustrating in this format where we're online, which is the instructional plan piece. And again, I'm going to use that word adopt, has some negative connotations to teachers and teachers' minds. And that's where you have to break down the wall, because until you look enough at the curriculum and experience it, it's hard to note the big patterns that are tied towards proficiency that connect to your prompt. So what you're doing here, the idea here is to kind of look at your activities, then look at the questions that are being asked. And literally listing them verbatim is going to be time consuming. But if you're doing this with your team once every other week or once every 3 weeks, to be honest with you, we did this prior to the unit starting. So I want to clarify, this work happens with the most impact before you teach your unit. So when you're looking at the 10,000 foot view based off of this concept of unpacking the prompt, the end of the unit task, what you kind of do when you move into stage 3 is you're looking at your next 5 days of instruction. And what you're trying to do in those next, I start with 1 day. In those next few days of instructions, noticing the questions that are being asked and the knowledge that's being built by the sequence of those questions in each activity and how it ties to mastery, because there's a lot of standard work that is embedded in those questions. Each and every question is building intentionally towards some concept within the text that is going to lead to greater mastery for the kids. So it's almost like each question is like its own little scaffold, if you will, to help them get closer to what big nugget they're supposed to have. So the sooner you can make those connections based off that everyday getting to know your kids better, I feel like this process helps you sort of know what your kids need, in married with the concept of what is coming up and what are we learning. I'm going to give you an example. In Amplify 6th grade, what am I trying to say? Argumentative writing is introduced in Unit 6. I'm sorry, not in Unit 6, in the Greek unit. And so that standard work is embedded in the first 2 activities. If I were to pull the planning guides underneath the unit plan, I would miss that standard work if I wasn't looking at the first 3 activities. And I just looked at the overarching focus questions and what we're reading that day, because the standard work is embedded in the first 2 activities of the first 2 lessons in subunit 1. And if I don't do that work and I skip straight to argumentative, I am not supporting kids who struggle, but I'm also not really giving a lot of space to helping develop an understanding of why we would even need a counterclaim. And that's their first introduction to that. So we have to be kind of cautious here, because this is where, again, I use that word adopt because there really isn't any shame in adopting. Amplify is not going to tell you where these text connections are. Your principal may not offer you team planning time. So that's why I feel like this work is so important, because it's really about teacher care in understanding accurately what proficiency means within each day that you're teaching and how you systematically support yourself in building that knowledge without wearing yourself out. You know what I mean? And taking a lot of B12, which I know y'all probably do anyway. But anyway, so that's the work that happens down here. And then we think about that through our tasks, and then the thinking connected to those tasks out of those 2 or 3 tasks that we are doing, and then what the exit ticket is testing and looking at, and what is connected here. So there's mastery that goes across. What are we learning today? What did we learn today? And then there's a connection to be made between what do we need to know by the end of this unit. So there's some learning that can be made connected there that can increase the likelihood that kids will actually gain that knowledge because you're reflecting on it at the end of the unit or the end of the day's lesson. So you're probably tired of hearing me talk, and I don't think we have time to we don't have time to allow you to really dig into that work.
Well, I did want to tell you guys, I know this looks like a lot of text coming at the eyeball, and it is, but part of the reason that I highlighted this stuff here is literally, I mean, you can see I need to highlight what knowledge about this in these, and then this stuff right here. That's the stuff that we added. That was the actual thinking that Sarah and I did as we were plowing through this. Literally, guys, everything else that's up there, I seriously just copied and pasted. So it looks like a ton of this is a lot of brain work, and it really is. But the stuff that you're actually going to end up doing, either on your own or within your PLCs, you can see it's just a little bit right here. So I feel like it's a little bit overwhelming to the eyeball if you're looking at it all in one great big chunk. But yeah, I think that was important to go through, Sarah. I do.
And this is part of a bookend process. And if we think about, say we did 4 units this year, say you do 4 Amplify units next year. If you do this, if you go through this process, even if you only get through 2 days of instruction, you are bringing awareness to your team and building that knowledge with your team of what practices are tied towards mastery. What we have not added here that could be added is when we think about features in student writing, or when we think about features in student talk, what do we want to hear them say and see them write about based off of the standards listed here as well, if you had time left over after you did that. Then you're only going to do that once, preferably before instruction starts. So what's great about this is you're bringing clarity to what is really important from the 10,000 foot view in terms of where am I moving towards. Then you're kind of looking at the granular level, what is in this activity that's tied to that. And I know Anna and I've talked about teamwork, and sometimes if your district has given a lot of flexibility with usage, you can feel frustrated in this process because it may not be relevant to and it might not be relevant to all team members. Okay.
Yeah.
However, here's what I'm going to say. The companion planning support that happens after this is going to clarify what proficiency looks like for your children. And that's also some standard work that you can uncover as a team that's going to build collective efficacy, because then you can bring value to each other in the sense of, whoa, I never thought about this is what kids needed to have in their writing. And I never thought that the standard really connected to that. But now that I see what you had kids do here, that makes me understand the standard a little bit better. Because you're going to see a lot of difference in how people interpret what proficiency looks like, because when your homework for next time is to bring 2 or 3 proficient, not advanced, but on grade level writing assignments to kind of think about as we look at the planning process that I would call that we have bookend planning. This process goes before unit instruction, and the second piece comes after the unit instruction is over and they've completed their writing. So that's been a lot. And you all have been champions of this because I feel like we've talked a lot. Are there any, based off just this process, are you feeling any questions come up or wonderings that you have? And Candace went away. Holy moly. Okay. Part of what I want to say is that it's overwhelming to think about on your own. And it's also part of that self-care and that teacher efficacy that we've talked about. What do I need to do to build this knowledge for myself? And sometimes your building administrator is not going to be able to give that time to you. And sometimes your teams aren't going to be there for you. So I say that in, I'm more than happy to virtually, I know I'm not in your district, and Anna can vouch, if you have any questions or want to walk through this process or practice this process with the units you're choosing to start next year, please do not hesitate to call us and have us work with you to go through that process. I use a book called by Jim Burke, and it's it's the Jim Burke book around standard connections. Have you seen that book? Anna, have you seen that book? Okay, I highly recommend it. You want the newest edition because it connects to 10 ready standards. So it will have 7th grade, 8th grade, 6th grade, 10 ready standards, and it will tell you what page number to turn to, and it will tell you what teachers do and what students do as you look at that book. And that's going to give you some insight when you think about standard connection and the prompt. And it's going to help make that work a little bit deeper. And also what I love about it is it gives the gist of that work in history, science, narrative text, informational text. It kind of runs the gamut, so you can get a sense of what are some high level questions that are going to get to the work of the standard, and Jim Burke breaks that down. So I just wanted to share that resource with you because it's been essential in this process. We have in the documents here, and I'm going to go ahead and click on it. I'm going to go back up here to the document thing that Candace dropped in, and I'm going to share my screen so that we can finish out. I'm so sorry. I'm not sure quite what happened.
Whoops. My computer had a stroke, I think is what happened.
That is funny.
It's
Yay,
almost done
Candace.
right now.
Yay.
Isn't this nice? So Sarah, thanks for kind of jumping in and saving the day. Like seriously, it's having a moment right now. But yeah, that's what I'll send you a message. That's pretty much what we had left was like the reflection, but you take it away, girl.
No, I was just going to say that this work can be a little overwhelming. It's definitely part of an adoption process that we have to kind of go through to understand what's there. And Standard Connections is the Jim Burke book title. What's it called, Candace? There you go. I'm sorry. Standards Companion, Your Literacy Standards Companion. And it's about $32 on Amplify. I'm sorry, on Amazon. It's not on Amplify. That's what we've been talking about. But if you don't care, we really would like your feedback. We apologize that we weren't able to dig into you actually planning with your materials as much as we would like. But we also realize that as teacher leaders, bringing this back to your team is where this work really needs to live, to have meaning and value to the work that you're doing. So again, please feel free to be as honest as you can be on our evaluation form. And it has been a pleasure to see Anna and to meet Hannah and to be here together with you today. And I'm looking forward. I hope you all are able to come the next time because I feel like this work is powerful, but in the context of the bookend work, you really need after the unit is over to see the complete process. And I'm going to say this too, as you collect evidence, what's great about the final session is when you start to develop what proficiency looks like in student work, you can find the best example as a team that you feel like illustrates the components of the standard you're looking for, you can make copies of that for everybody's notebook so that next year as you go into that unit, you have that reminder of what proficiency looks like. So developing that picture of proficiency helps really bring, and I'm going to use some hot topic words here, a lot of equitable thought, and is completely inclusive in terms of building teacher capacity within you all are already doing that every single day, but in terms of people that may not engage in that kind of thinking that you all are doing, it's helpful to all kids in your building. And the good news is your data is going to go up and gaps will close. So you can share that with your principal. In the materials, you have all of the data research and where we got some of our templates from. You'll see the original template. So if there's something that you want to change as you bring it to your team, feel free. I think Candace has talked about it. It's not going to change the value of the process. But thank you all so much. Oh my gosh, did we finish at 4:30?
Write it down. That has never happened before.
Oh,
Pretty close. I've got 4:31. And like I said, we dealt with my computer having a seizure or some such. So y'all did
listen,
great.
I'm
Thanks for rolling
sitting
with
in
it.
my carport in my garage, and I'm planning on staying here for as long as I can. So if you all have any questions, anything you want to talk about related to anything, I mean, anything, y'all, I'm going to be right here for a little while. But for the most part, our session is over. And I know from Candace and I both, we really appreciate you all being here.
Thank you, ladies.
You're welcome. So I was going to talk about why I'm not doing the essay on 7D Poetry and Poe, because every year for the past 5 years on TCAP, we've had a narrative. And Amplify has only touched narrative once, maybe twice in any unit. And so now I have
And
turned.
you know, we didn't only have narrative.
No.
You know, every other student, there was an argumentative text. Half the kids got argumentative text and half the kids got narrative.
Well,
That's true.
well, my kids have always, but I have done argument. I've done at least 2 argument essays already. I think one or two in Amplify, but the practice on SchoolNet was narrative, and they sucked it up because it had them write from a different point of view of the character in the text, and they didn't understand how to do that. So I'm now doing a mini lesson on narrative with Telltale Heart. They have to write from a different point of view, from the old man's point of view or a police officer. And then we're going to do the unit on Cask of Amontillado. And then the test actually has a narrative prompt that I'm going to use as a timed writing practice.
Have you looked, I'm asking you this question, and I was going to try to quickly look it up myself, but I only have one computer screen, and it's going to make me not be able to do this. Have you looked at the quest?
Yeah, I'm going to do that. So instead of the
narrative prompt?
No, the quest is actually informational.
Are you sure? Because some of the, I did the quest I taught the quest at Clinch Mountain School, and I feel like there was a day or two that we actually worked on narrative.
It said that they have to write, I just looked at it the other day. Hold on, I'll pull it up too.
It may be, I couldn't remember what it was, but
I think it's just informational. They have to write a page. I forget how it worded it. I haven't delved into the quest yet because I'm going to do it, but where is I don't know where to go now. I don't remember.
The reason I was saying that, and here's why I was thinking that you might want to look there, is that there is point of view cards that are associated with the characters. So there is a policeman point of view card. There's point of view cards that exist for, and I think it's like day 2 or day 3 of the quest, where they read the character. They're not allowed to tell who they have, but they have to write a paragraph about the character using the description.
Yeah.
So they have to take evidence from that description. The reason I say that is it could support the point of view they choose. So
Yeah.
if you were having them do that prompt, you could choose to use the two cards from the two perspectives that you chose that they could choose from. And for your low kids, work on that character perspective from those cards. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. But I want to do the quest as a whole, because in the end, here's what they have to do at the end. They have to they have to write an accusation report.
Whether he's crazy or not, right?
No, that was that was
the
the debate. We just did that debate.
Okay.
They have to write an accusation report of who they think did the crime.
Okay.
And so that kind of, to me, was a little bit argument as well. So that's why I was like, oh, I'll just do narrative instead of the end writing.
Yeah.
And I'm still using all the stuff. Well, my Telltale Heart prompt is not Amplify, but I just worded it like Amplify does. But the timed writing one for Cask of Amontillado is from Amplify. It's in the test. So instead of giving it as part of the test, I'm just going to use it like a timed writing practice to see if they really got Is that, I mean, I know you're a diehard, do Amplify like it says.
I'm not a diehard do Amplify like it says, only in the sense that like it makes it easier when you're following that process to know what you've covered. But if you need to adjust instruction based off the needs of your kids, I mean, I feel like you've got a thoughtful process going on, and it's not like you're straying too far. In terms of state assessment, it's just always different. I mean, there's always, I'm hoping, have you all seen the new live binder?
I've not looked at it recently. But
okay, so me neither. Don't worry, me neither. I didn't look at it until hey, I check that out all the time. I'm just kidding. I do not for fun. Here's what I'm going to say. The live binder is embedded in the blueprint document. Candace and I kind of were snooping around on the state website because we wanted to look at the grammar percentages, and we confirmed what we already knew, which is grammar is mostly tested in the long extended writing. Okay, the majority of their grammar points are not going to come from the reading assessment. It's going to come from what they write. Okay, so that feedback piece is essential and is really going to play out well, especially if you've used the flex days to do the introductory of the grammar skill and held them accountable for it in their writing, because that's where they're going to be held. That's where the most points can be had in terms of grammar credit, if that makes sense, in that grammar column on their writing rubric. What was I going to say? I lost my train of thought, and I do that often. Okay, so what are we talking about?
You're giving an argument as to why you should use Amplify in sequence.
Yes. I'm welcome to my birthday's this week. I'm welcome to 42. Yeah, we went to the live binder link and looked at even the prompt that was there, and it was not a narrative either. But here's what I want you to know. The practice test in live binder for 2019, 2020, they got away. I mean, it's a brand new site. So if you've not been there, it is a new test. If you've been looking at the older tests, there's one test for all 3 grade levels. So it's just worth going to see, because I think it's going to support the work that you all have been doing. And Hannah, in particular, to what you were talking about with regards to your vocabulary and context, I can't tell you how many questions there are that where it's part 1 and part 2. If this is what this word means, and then when the author uses it in this way, summarize what they were trying to say or connect it to the theme. I mean, it's just kind of some weird wording in there. It's just worth checking out. And again, if you email me, I can share that link with you. I'd be willing to share that live binder link if you're interested, because it looked so different. I was like, is this real? What happened to the old live binder? I still had that wondering.
Well, and I always, in terms of that grammar component, we have so many standards that we're supposed to cover. Like this week, my kids and I, we've been processing verb moods. And and sometimes they get real confused. And I said, I have never seen a context in which you will have to identify the verb mood, but you have to be able to use it well in a sentence. So that's the difference, because in some of it, my word, just that we beat it to death with colons and semicolons and different lists and contexts. But as long as they can use it proficiently, that's the goal. And again, we're not going to spend ages on something that's fewer than 10%, so that's the hard part.
Well, and I think, yeah, absolutely. And I think it goes to that point, to your point about that. It's like the introduction of standards. For example, if it is a grammar standard that is introduced in 8th grade, it's probably not going to be on your assessment. If it's a grammar standard introduced in 7th grade, it's not probably going to be on your 7th grade assessment. Now, it could potentially be on the 8th grade assessment, more likely to be on the 9th or the 10th grade assessment. Because what I noticed, and Candace and I did, we went back through the reading grammar questions. I mean, I want to say the majority of those questions that were embedded into a text where they were underlined and they were like, you're going to read this, whatever. And there are some places that the text is underlined that may or may not need to be corrected. And so then there were like 3 questions after that. I found, from having taught elementary school for 8 years prior to middle, that the majority of those standards were taught in elementary school. In some cases, as low as one of them was a 2nd grade standard that was introduced. So I feel like part of why we don't see argumentative writing as much in middle school is because it's introduced in 6th grade. And so I think that's why we use this idea of point of view to think about the narrative, which in some cases can feel, even to me, I know it's not, but can feel like almost opinion, because I am using what I believe to be the opinion of a character that I may or may not have enough information, and I'm going to have to fill in gaps about. So,
Well, yeah, that's what I kind of my lesson tomorrow is actually like they have to look at both the old man and the police officer, and they have to make a chart of like what they do know based on the text, and then they have to write what they will have to make up, and then they have to like decide who they're going to use.
Yeah, what they can infer based off of what the character thought, said, did, believes.
So yeah, it is. I mean, they just have to know what of their opinion to put in it, kind of thing. But yeah, I agree that it is kind of opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it's confusing, which is welcome. I mean, it's like welcome to the world of ELA, right? Like, I also will say that I know for a fact that 7th grade assessment, I'm sorry, I'm in my car and it's very loud. But I will say for a lot of the assessments that I have, given, that idea of informational text vocabulary in context is a killer, and is always standards that tend to be, it's text where, like we're just talking about, where it could be opinion, it could be informational, and it feels like both. So they really have to close read around what that author is saying and why they're saying it. So it's those 2-part questions that involve vocabulary in informational text, where it's connecting the context of the vocabulary word with either the theme or the opinion of the author of the text, or the kind of the implied feeling or mood of the character.
And I think that's a hard part, because in some sense, you're gauging their creativity when you do that. And I'm teaching on poetry this 6 weeks, and we do multiple choice tests we do Mastery Connect. So we've just been quizzing on that this week. And it's so difficult because I'll have kids who say, well, this is what I inferred from the poem, and it's multiple choice. And poetry at its best, is multifaceted and can apply to all kinds of people. But then when you say it's either A, B, C, or D, it's very hard for kids, because some are so literal, some are so creative, but it's striking that balance, and that's tough to teach for sure.
Well, and yeah, creativity in a parameter, and using what we know about text and author's craft I mean, it's honestly like a PhD for ELA teachers. But I will say, have you used any of the poetry units, Anna?
Yeah, I used them in December.
Okay.
Because
So they've changed.
short things.
Yay, they've changed 2.3 or 3.0 or 4.0 or whatever. Here's what I'm going to say. I am excited about the poetry units and their updates. I will also say, have you seen the assign feature?
Like where you just hit assign and it goes to Google Classroom or whatever, or assign and it goes wherever.
No, where you click assign, say you're in a flex day and you got all those activities for kids.
Mm-hmm.
Click assign and you can assign specific activities to the children you need to assign them to.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I haven't got to use the flex days because we're virtual only on Wednesdays. And so my flex day has turned into grammar day. Just do something at home, please, dear God. And so,
Well, listen, you look, that's something this summer, since you kind of, you should look at that because it was really cool. And I was excited when you said that about spelling, Hannah. There is a spelling addition to Amplify that will support your below grade level kids who are still really struggling in their own writing in spelling words correctly that are important. I don't necessarily know that the words like the vocabulary support are tied to the text that you're reading, but it could be tied to the prompt itself, or it could be tied to just common transitions or common things that they're struggling with, and some of the phonetic development necessary. It provides those kind of like lessons. So if you're lucky enough to have like push-in support or even sped time, where a sped teacher is looking for some activities to do with kids, it's a great opportunity to share with them some tied into what you're needing support with kind of work for them, where they're not having to develop it on their own. And also can really help kids build more confidence. Plus, I know this is the scary part, but some of those Master Connect lessons are scripted. So for your, your paraprofessionals or support staff, it helps them feel more confident in delivering that kind of instruction to kids. I just wanted to share that. So, guys, it's 4:46. I have appreciated your all's questions. I'm more than happy to stay on longer. Is it Friday yet? Is that what you're? I'm sending you all good vibes. Thank you so much. And I'm sending you good vibes. I bet the kids will do great on their narrative. Take care. Thank you. It was great to meet you, Hannah. Anna.